Hello everyone. Have you ever wondered how health systems decide who needs urgent care and who can simply follow routine checkups when resources are always limited and demand is always high? Today we are going to walk through the risk approach strategy in antenatal care, a managerial tool designed specifically for maternal and child health. The core philosophy of resource allocation rests on one guiding idea: something for all, but more for those in need in proportion to the need. In reality, every pregnant woman looks the same on the surface, standing in an equal line. But the risk approach reshapes this reality into a funnel where universal care is provided to everyone at the top, while targeted intensive care is reserved for those at the bottom who need it most. This approach works as a proxy for need, since risk measurement directly translates to clinical need. It ensures managerial efficiency by maximizing output from limited developing world resources. And it carries a dual mandate: identifying high risk cases for skilled care while still providing appropriate baseline care for all. To understand vulnerability properly, we need to look at three epidemiological metrics. Risk itself is the statistical chance, the probability that adverse consequences are increased by the presence of specific characteristics. Relative risk measures the strength of association, the bond between a factor and an outcome, comparing exposed and unexposed groups. For example, a relative risk of 1.3 equals a 30% excess risk in the exposed population. Attributable risk measures the community impact, indicating what might be expected to happen to the overall community outcome if the risk factor was completely removed, calculated as total risk minus baseline risk. Every risk factor has its own anatomy, which can be understood along three dimensions. In terms of modifiability, some risk factors are modifiable and actionable, like smoking, hypertension, physical activity, and obesity, which are amenable to direct intervention, while others are unmodifiable signals, like age, sex, race, and genetic history, which simply alert health professionals. In terms of causality, some factors are causative, directly related to pathology, such as malnutrition causing low birth weight. Some are contributory, exacerbating the outcome, such as poverty or crowding. And some are only predictive, showing a statistical link only, such as illiteracy predicting perinatal mortality. And in terms of scope, risk factors can be individual, like age or hyperarity, or community level, like malaria prevalence, substandard housing, or poor water supply. When risk factors combine, the math of danger becomes important to understand. Additive effects occur when independent risks stack on top of each other. For example, smoking plus occupational exposure, creating a stacked risk for bladder cancer. Synergistic or multiplicative effects occur when risks multiply each other's severity when present together. For example, hypertensive disease combined with poor antenatal care drastically multiplies the probability of perinatal mortality far beyond what simple addition would predict. Prioritizing targets for intervention uses a scoring matrix where health problems are rated on extent, seriousness, preventability, local concern, and time trend, each carrying a different weight. Looking at three examples, maternal mortality scores 123 and is rated high priority. Neonatal tetanus scores 142 and is rated top priority, requiring immediate action. And childhood road traffic accidents score 117 and are simply placed under monitoring. This scoring system helps decision makers balance urgency against available resources. Now, let us look at how maternal risk is identified, starting with anthropometric thresholds. For stature and frame, a short statured primigravida is defined as 140 centimeters and below, and extreme weight deficiency is defined as weight below 40 kilograms. For weight dynamics, obesity or overnutrition acts as a significant risk multiplier for systemic complications, while malnutrition or undernutrition has a direct causative link to low birth weight. And for stagnation, A weight gain of less than 5 kilograms during the entire course of pregnancy is a red flag. These physical signals are highly visible, easily measured by frontline workers like traditional birth attendants, and they immediately mandate escalation in the care system. Reproductive history is another major identifier of maternal risk. Young mothers under 18 years of age fall into a high risk category, as do elderly primigravidas aged 30 and over. Parity and frequency also matter, including elderly grand multiparas, women with more than 4 pregnancies, and those with frequent pregnancies or narrow birth intervals. Historical complications that raise risk include 3 or more spontaneous consecutive abortions, a previous stillbirth or intrauterine death, a history of previous cesarean or instrumental delivery, manual removal of the placenta, and treatment for infertility. Systemic diseases in pregnancy force an immediate high risk classification requiring specialized management. Cardiometabolic conditions include cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. Infectious and communicable conditions include tuberculosis, HIV, malaria, reproductive tract infections, and sexually transmitted infections. Renal and hepatic conditions include kidney disease and liver disease. Respiratory and neurological conditions include asthma and convulsions, and hematological conditions include anemia. Current obstetric complications also identify maternal risk across 5 categories. Toxemia includes preeclampsia and eclampsia. Mechanical or spatial complications include malpresentations like breech or transverse lie. Capacity related complications include twins, triplets, or hydramnios. Vascular threats include antepartum hemorrhage and threatened abortion. And chronological complications include prolonged pregnancy, meaning 14 days after the expected date of delivery. Identifying the at risk infant is just as critical in order to prevent excessive perinatal, neonatal, and infant mortality. Birth and growth deficits include a birth weight less than 2.5 kilograms, classified as low birth weight below 70% of expected, indicating second or third degree malnutrition, and failure to gain weight during 3 successive months. Environmental and social context factors include birth order 5 and above, being a twin, artificial feeding, and having a working mother or a one parent household. An active pathology includes the presence of protein energy malnutrition and diarrhea. The filter that manages all of this risk is the multi tiered referral chain. At level 1, the traditional birth attendant approaches all pregnant mothers and examines them for baseline risks. At level 2, the auxiliary nurse midwife examines cases escalated by the traditional birth attendant. At level 3, the senior nurse or doctor manages moderate to high complexities. At level 4, the hospital doctor handles severe obstetric complications. And at level 5, the specialist sees only very high risk mothers. At each tier, the functionary makes a definitive decision to keep the case, refer it upward, or return it to a lower tier for routine monitoring. This referral chain runs on a risk scoring mechanism using scores from 0 to 5, providing a simple, easy to use index of urgency, seriousness, and complexity. The traditional birth attendant examines all scores from 0 to 5, keeps only score 0, and refers everything from 1 to 5 upward. The auxiliary nurse midwife examines scores 1 to 5, keeps score 2, refers scores 3 to 5, and returns score 1. The senior nurse examines scores 3 to 5, keeps score 3, refers scores 4 and 5, and returns score 2. The doctor examines scores 4 and 5, keeps score 4, refers score 5, and returns score 3. And the specialist examines only score 5, keeps it, has nothing further to refer, and returns score 4 back down the chain. There is always a yield trade off between resources and reality when setting screening thresholds. False positives result in overdiagnosis, which overburdens the referral system and wastes scarce specialist time. For example, bottle fed infants who never actually suffer from gastroenteritis being flagged unnecessarily. False negatives result in underdiagnosis, which leads to tragic, preventable outcomes. For example, breastfed infants who still die from gastroenteritis despite being considered lower risk. The compromise is that when setting the cutoff for a continuous risk factor, communities must weigh how many false positives they can financially and logistically afford in order to achieve the desired reduction in false negatives. Before designing any risk intervention, 9 categories of intelligence must be gathered, forming what can be called the data web. This includes age and sex distribution by community or household, mortality by age, sex, and cause, local cultural factors, occupations, religion, and attitudes toward health, acceptance and integration of traditional systems of medicine, existing services likely to have the most impact, environmental risk factors, local community organizations and groups, local healthcare personnel and infrastructure, and current methods for dealing with maternal and child health problems. Once this data is gathered, the intervention selection pathway follows 4 steps. The first is managerial potential, avoiding authoritarian approaches and ensuring no conflict with local values, religious customs, such as attitudes toward contraception or national interests. The second is core criteria, where the intervention must fundamentally balance importance, feasibility, and acceptability. The third is local priorities, where targets must be specific and well defined, such as reducing maternal or perinatal mortality. And the fourth is resource mapping, identifying trained people, technology, and funds, while also recognizing crucial invisible resources like time, commitment, enthusiasm, and cooperation. Modifying risk factors is ultimately a matter of time since interventions operate on different timelines. Immediate action can address things like modifying unsatisfactory personal hygiene, negligent work patterns, or numerous intercurrent illnesses. Next pregnancy timelines apply to addressing inadequate family planning services or improving nutritional status between births. And next generation timelines apply to overcoming deep rooted cultural taboos, reversing the effects of dwarfing or stunting, and mitigating large scale environmental hazards. The risk approach delivers system wide benefits across 4 levels. At the self and family level, it improves the ability to recognize health priorities, enables informed surveillance of self, and allows earlier self referral. At the local community level, it empowers village groups, self help groups, and women's organizations. At the healthcare system level, it optimizes resource allocation, increases coverage such as universal immunization and essential newborn care, and builds better referral chains. And at the regional and national policy level, it defines priorities, shapes capacity and staffing needs, and drives intersectoral collaboration. Despite its efficacy, applying this approach to primary healthcare faces severe limitations due to evaluative research shortages and 4 main barriers. Ethical constraints arise from the principle that there can be no research without service, which complicates data gathering. Sociological friction occurs when interventions are out of sync with local culture, customs, and milieus, causing them to fail. Managerial and political barriers include a lack of intersectoral alignment and structural political hurdles. And human resource barriers include deep problems with human motivation, training, and a critical shortage of highly skilled personnel. Bringing this all together, the risk strategy engine takes population data and individual risk factors as its input, applies epidemiological scoring through relative and attributable risk via the multi tiered health workforce as its process, and produces an output that eases pressure on limited hospital beds, saves expert human resources and sophisticated equipment for those who need it most, and develops health auxiliaries at the periphery, ultimately leading to optimized maternal and child health outcomes. Ultimately, this strategy shows that measurement itself becomes a proxy for care. The risk approach is a definitive managerial tool for developing countries with scarce resources. By pushing basic maternal and child health care close to home and aggressively filtering for vulnerability, we maximize output. The final takeaway is this: the more accurately a risk is measured, the better our understanding of human need becomes. Predictions and measured risks are not just statistics, they are our clearest guide for compassionate action, ensuring more care for those in need precisely in proportion to that need. Hope you have understood about the risk approach strategy in antenatal care, a managerial tool for maternal and child health. If you found this video useful, please like and share with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.